everyone. Thanks for attending the fireside chat. And with us today, we have Mr. Vaibhav Joshi from Equitas Small Finance Bank. He's the Chief Digital Officer. Vaibhav, thanks a lot for your time today. And thanks for attending and for all the insight that you're about to share. So I'll just start with a quick intro. Basically, Vaibhav has 20 years of overall experience in the digital space. And before joining Equitas, he worked with Yes Bank for 6 years as Group Executive, Vice President, and National Head, Digital Banking. He's been associated with the launch of Aadhaar in the country in the past and has also launched businesses in technology, payments, and the food tech industry. He has also launched a couple of successful payment platforms and products in the past, which have gone on to become industry leaders. We will start the call with Vaibhav talking about the digital strategy at Equitas Small Finance Bank. We'll go on with some questions, and we'll also open it up for Q&A. Anybody who has a question, please feel free to raise your hand, and I will pass it on to you. Or if you want to type your questions over chat, I can read it out. Also note that there won't be any questions related to the quarter during the call or any numbers relating to the quarter during the call. Thanks and great. So thanks, welcome Vaibhav. Let's start with the fireside.
So thanks Abhishek, thanks for having me, and welcome to everyone on this webinar. So Abhishek, you wanted me to start with the key pillars of digital banking.
Right. So I think
that's what you said.
Yes. So just to give a slight context, so Equitas has recently hired a number of people. You've got a new CTO, you've got yourself, you've got a new EVP operations. So a lot is being done on the digital side to strengthen the entire digital operations at ESFB. So I would request you to talk a little bit about this second phase. What exactly is the thought process? What are the key pillars of this digital 2.0, if you want to call it that? And whether top level hirings are done or you are looking to add more strength to your team. So just let's start with that.
Sure, Abhishek. So yes, we are calling it Digital 2.0 over here at Equitas. And as a part of Digital 2.0, what we are trying to do over here is we are trying to create a proper framework and a structure for digital banking. So earlier Equitas had something known as alternate channels. It had alternate channel products which comprised of digital banking products. It had some digital channel products and it had some digital support. These were the three main departments or sub-departments which comprised of digital banking. Now what we are trying to do is we are trying to give it a proper framework in terms of giving it deep roots and how we are doing it. And let me first explain the structure of the new digital banking before I go on to comment of the hiring that we are doing both at the top level and at the team lead level within digital banking. So digital 2.0, there are primarily 6 pillars in digital 2.0. The first pillar is the neo-banking and the fintech alliances pillar. So as a part of neo-banking and fintech alliances, what we plan to do is we plan to come out with use case specific products and we plan to launch it in the market. Now these use case specific products will be both bank-led as well as partner-led. And that is the reason this division is known as neo-banking and fintech alliances. So we intend to partner with like-minded fintechs who may have certain technologies, who may have expertise in a certain area. And if that is in sync with the outcome we are looking at or the domain that we are willing to explore, then we would partner with that fintech on a particular product and we do a go-to-market journey. The second important pillar of digital banking is a dedicated digital banking sales and business development team. Now this dedicated digital banking sales and business development team, though it's going to be a very lean and mean team, the idea of this team is to have one direct go-to-market for the digital banking products and to also work with the liability and the asset RMs to make sure that there is enough penetration of enough push for penetration of digital banking products within the respective domains. To give you a case in point, in the retail banking, we would be catering to a lot of MSMEs. Now, when I'm going to launch a product under my neo banking arm on a B2B2C model, which would probably be catering to MSMEs, merchants, retail merchants, and so on, it is easier for me to use my existing field strength. And that is where the digital banking sales team comes into play. It does a train the trainer kind of a thing. It ensures that enough targets are given, and then it rolls out the product pan India. For example, we can talk about something like a cashless campus. If I roll out a product in the education segment to create campuses cashless, then digital banking sales team can have a direct target, plus it can work with liability RMs and in some place also asset RMs. The third most important pillar, Abhishek, of digital banking is going to be digital channels. Digital channels comprises of mobile banking, internet banking, corporate net banking, social media banking, and bot banking. The idea of having a dedicated digital channels team is to ensure that the customer experience across all these channels improve. We keep on innovating, we keep on launching new products. For example, mobile banking is one area that we have identified where we plan to eventually launch our new product, a new mobile banking app altogether. At some point of time, we will revamp our corporate internet banking, we'll revamp our internet banking. We will be having strategies around social media banking and bot banking as well. The fourth most important pillar of digital banking is going to be the digital payment products. Now, when I say digital payment products, it comprises of payment products, it comprises of acquisition products, and it comprises of business correspondent-led model products. This is both on direct as well as partner-led model. For example, we have prepaid over there, we have FASTag over there, we have NETC over there, we have partner-led POS over there, we have mobility-driven solutions to target merchants over there. We have UPI, Bharat QR, payment gateway. We have AEPS, DMT, micro ATM. We intend to create something like a Master Money Send, Visa Direct, or a virtual account kind of a solution. We intend to get into IMT, which is essentially getting cash out through your mobile number. And not just through a ATM, but also possibly through a micro ATM or through a BC ATM. So this is the digital payments vertical. It's a very, very important part of the new P&L that we are developing. The next most important vertical is the digital transaction banking. Now, as a small finance bank, we have not had too many products on the transaction banking side. But what we plan to do going forward is, we plan to create a structured platform for digital transaction banking, where we will have products aimed at various target segments. Now, the reason for creating this platform right now is, so when we go on to apply and possibly become a universal bank, at that time, I need to have the backbone structure ready, and that is the idea of bringing digital transaction banking today. Digital transaction banking is also important because a lot of my asset products today are being distributed through a dedicated asset distribution. And if I have a digital platform around it, tomorrow it would be easier for me to distribute these asset products digitally. And the last and the most important pillar of digital banking is going to be the digital transformation team. Digital transformation team is responsible for the internal digitization of the bank. It is also responsible to carry out the process automation or business process re-engineering, and then digitizing various liability as well as asset products as well. So this was on the pillars. What are the digital key pillars of digital banking? Coming to your second question, Abhishek, where you asked me about the recruitments and stuff. So yes. Equitas is really looking at investing into talent, and you must have seen the announcements a couple of days back. So we have a new CTO in the form of Narayanan Ishwaran, who has joined us from IDFC Bank. He has tremendous experience under his belt from the technology side. We have a new Chief People Officer, Pallav. We have a new asset head, Rohit. We have a new operations head, Sibi. We have a new CDO, that's me. We have a new deputy CTO as well, Vivek Dhave. Okay, so yes, we have beefed up at the top level, and as we speak, all these SBUs that I spoke about in digital banking, okay, we have either carried out the hiring or we are just about to close that last position. The offer letters are already out there. Candidates have accepted the offers. A few of them have joined and a few of them are on the verge of joining in a month or month and a half. And they are serving the notice period.
So what is the, let's say, strength of the digital banking team today? And eventually, once all these hires join, what do you think will be the size or the strength of your team?
So Abhishek, when I joined, and let me take a step back and give you a little bit of brief on there as well. So I was working with Ritesh, and yes, and then Ritesh quit, and I'm sure most of the analysts would know Ritesh joined TerraPay, and just post that I decided to move out as well, and I took a early exit. I spoke to the management at least, and I took an early exit. I joined here on 14th of December. And the reason for me taking an early exit was I wanted to spend the last quarter of this fiscal, the last fiscal now, to plan the entire digital banking structure, to create the entire digital banking P&L, to have the necessary approvals in place and roll out the office. Now, when I joined, we were a team of 11 people. Today, we are a team of 16 people. And within this year, we will become a team of 38 people. That's the sanction that I already taken. So as we speak, there are already 10 or 11 offers that are rolled out in the market. In addition to that, so this is the direct digital banking team. In addition to that, there are 30 more positions who will be supporting dedicatedly to digital banking, which will be part of my support units. For example, CPC operations team, for example, technology support, for example, video KYC, so on and so forth. So those are also in place. And those are also getting hired.
Okay. And this standalone BD team that you mentioned, right? The digital banking sales team, I think that's what you mentioned as one of the pillars. How is it going to be structured? Is it they're all going to be in Chennai and they're going to control operations from there, or how is it going to be structured, and how are you ensuring that these teams are liaising with retail assets or retail liabilities effectively?
Okay, so digital banking sales team's primary responsibility is going to be penetration of digital banking products in the market through two channels. One is bank-led channel, second is direct go-to-market. This is going to be geographically segregated team. So there is a person based out of Bangalore, there is a person based out of Chennai, there is a person based out of Bombay, and there is a person based out of Delhi. Today, we have these 4 metros already covered for digital banking sales. Okay, they are similar to what we would call a PSM in a normal banking terminology, or a product sales manager. Now, the idea is to immediately increase the strength from 4 to 8 people, because what we intend to do is we will be giving them a very domain specific, product specific approach, where they would be creating strategies and approaching clients either directly or through the partner RM. Now, whether or not they are working with the asset RMs or the liability teams or not is the function of the digital banking sales head, and the digital banking sales head is actually creating strategies based on this. To give you an example, let's take FASTag as a product. So FASTag as a product, there is a synergy between our vehicle finance team. At the same time, we appoint our own channel partners as well. So appointing a channel partner is a direct strategy. Synergizing with vehicle finance team is a internal partner-led strategy. Similarly, if you talk about incentive management and expense management solution that we are creating, now there it's going to be a direct go-to-market strategy, because there my customers are going to be on a B2B2C model. So largely I will be approaching corporates or OEMs, manufacturing units. And through them, I will be penetrating these products in the market for their entire distribution or for their entire teams. And there today, Equitas being a small finance bank, it makes more sense for me to have my guys directly approach these corporates, create their own pipeline and do the sales directly, because I do not have strength on that side today at least.
Sure. Sure. And, So let's pick up some of these fintech tie-ups, and a lot of banks, universal banks, and small finance banks are going in for various kind of tie-ups, right? Somebody with SME, somebody with for millennials like you all did. So I just wanted to ask you, what is your strategy? How you are or which customer segments or which product segments are you going to target through your fintech tie-ups?
So Abhishek, there are multiple segments that we are targeting over here. But on the fintech tie-up, let me give a word of caution before I start talking on that. And this word of caution comes from my personal experience of having worked with so many fintechs in the past 6 years at Yes Bank. Okay, the first program that we did on the fintech side was, when I launched Freecharge along with Ritesh and Kunal, and this was 2016 sometime, I don't remember, around that sometime, and then eventually we went on to launch PhonePe and all these products, and they have went on to become super hit. But having said, let's see what happens is, now it's a very interesting word, this fintech, okay? And most of the times what happens is this fintech want to use bank as a backend service provider, and they would take away maximum percentage of the revenue. Okay, and I've been talking on a couple of forums recently, and this is what I've been trying to drive home the point, that at the end of the day, you will need to select fintechs based on your requirement, not become a requirement to the fintech because they have a certain go-to-market plan for their product. In that scenario, you just are adding to your top line, not adding to your bottom line. Adding to top line is great if it is a part of your strategy for acquiring a customer or for acquiring a merchant. But if not, then adding to top line is just a transaction number at the end of the day. Having said that, what we are planning at Equitas is, it's a dual pronged strategy. One, we are launching bank-led programs, and two, we are launching partner-led programs. So in the bank-led programs that we are launching, we have identified education as a segment. We want to catch young students who are in their youth, and we want them to start using our products at an early stage. So there, what we are trying to do is, we are trying to do a cashless campus kind of an initiative. We will start with schools, we'll start with colleges, we'll go to universities. The idea is to have a student ID card, a combo card, which acts as a student ID plus as a banking instrument. Now, as a banking instrument, it can act as a prepaid card, it can act as a debit card. It's a variety depending on what kind the partner university, college, or school wants. That card can work on an NFC tap and go technology, where there is a NFC acquiring within the canteens and within the administrative offices, cafeterias, etc., and within the shops in the campus. So it's a two-in-one combo product. It can be clubbed with a mobile app for fee payment. It can be clubbed with an internet payment gateway or a UPI for fee payment. It can be clubbed with a virtual account for fee payment as well. Plus, there can be, we integrate with the school or the education institute's ERP to make sure that, there are enough and more notifications going to the parents in a timely manner with a link. So parent just clicks on the link and, it lands on a payment page and the payment happens. Now, what do we do over there is, interestingly, now, there are companies who have been coming out with a product like this. But what we intend to do is, we intend to do a bit of cross-sell over there. So when we seed this product into the student's hands, okay, eventually when the student actually is in college and wants to go for higher education, okay, so that is where we catch the student for a cross-sell. Okay, now there are a lot of products in cross-sell that the bank does not have, and we plan to create those cross-sell products. For example, a student loan, okay, an education loan. Now, today I am launching the cashless campus product, not the education loan product. But eventually that is the plan, and that we will launch that cross-sell product as well. To give you another case in point, another segment that we are looking at is the blue collar segment. So again, in the blue collar segment, the product that we are creating is, it's a mini ERP in itself that, we can go and give to the factory workers, to the factories rather. The factories can integrate this mini ERP along with their, ERP systems, their legacy systems, their accounting systems like Tally and so on. Data import export can happen. So there is no data typing, there is no data entry required. And, these factory workers can be given a salary instrument. Now, generally what happens is, and when you give a debit card, when a bank gives a debit card, the bank is required to give at least 3 or 5 transactions free to the customer. And when the bank gives this 3 or 5 transactions free, there is a cost to the bank. So let's take a case in point of your normal debit card. So 20 rupees inclusive of taxes, more or less. Okay, give or take a few pesos, more or less, is what the cost is to the bank. And most of these transactions, unless it's a SBI card, SBI ATM, because that they have the highest amount of ATMs in the country, most of these transactions are an offers transaction, and it results in a cost to the bank who has actually issued the debit card.
Right.
So what we intend to do over there is we will roll out a savings account as a part of our blue collar worker strategy. So the blue collar worker can actually take benefit of the savings interest that we are offering. But as a front end, what we will do is we'll give him a prepaid card for emergency cash withdrawals. At the same time, within the same factory premises, we will be appointing a BC agent. So either the cafeteria worker, or one of the shops outside the factory, will appoint them as a BC agent with a micro ATM. A micro ATM is nothing but a mobile phone along with a this thing. There is a small device, and the worker can actually withdraw any amount of 10,000 rupees in a single transaction using the card and its PIN. The worker can withdraw any amount up to 10,000 rupees using his Aadhaar number and biometric through AEPS or through micro ATM. Here what happens is, see, as a part of JAM, Jandan Aadhaar Mobile, okay, most Indians have got a savings account. But most of these migrant workers, what they do is, they have given this card back to their wife or to their parents back home in the village, because they would earn money in cash and they would go to a money transfer agent. They would deposit 50% of their salary over there and do a domestic money transfer or a domestic remittance. By capturing this blue collared worker scenario, we intend to target the corporate from a banking perspective. We intend to target these workers from a salary perspective, and we intend to target these workers from their entire ecosystem requirement perspective. Now, how? So once the corporate makes the payment of the salary through the ERP that we have given them, which is actually a click of a button, the salary gets credited, this guy gets a notification. He has a mobile app which Equitas will give him. This mobile app will be used by him for his domestic money transfer or remittance. This mobile app will be used by him for his bill payments. This mobile app will be used by him for his value-added services, in addition to his banking services. Okay. He can make payments to his fellow workers. He can pull money by authenticating on both sides. So it's a very complex product that we are creating, but we are giving it a very, very simple usability. So there are 3-4 use cases captured within one product. Another use case that we intend to do on the fintech side, Abhishek, is where we are looking at launching a mobility-driven merchant acquiring. Now, the idea of launching a mobility-driven merchant acquiring app or a tool is, it's easy to deploy a POS machine, okay, but it's physical infrastructure. There is a cost attached to it. At the end of the day, there is a monthly rental that needs to be given to the bank, and so on and so forth. And it comes with a mandatory current account at the end of the day. Okay, what we want to do is we want to create a foot in the door strategy. Okay, as a small finance bank, we are very clear that we require foot in the door strategy before we actually go ahead and try to grab the business from that particular merchant or MSME. Now that foot in the door strategy is going to be what? It is going to be my superior product offering. And by superior product offering, I mean a mobility driven solution that automates all the manual processes that a MSME or a mom and pop kirana shop would be doing. His HR, his payroll, his accounting, his taxation. These are the 4 basic processes that these guys takes care of. The 5th is his distribution, which includes his inventory intake and his inventory outgo. That is the billing part of it. When we create this solution and launch it in the market and give it to the merchants, and then link it to payments, that is actually a very holistic solution. And how do I link it to payment? Most merchants have a smartphone, Android smartphone, which actually has an NFC chip inside it. Today, technology allows this NFC chip to be converted as a NFC POS for acquiring a tap and go transaction. Today, all debit credit cards are mandated to be NFC chip and pin based.
Right.
And thereby, once we launch this particular product in the market, your normal debit or credit card, you can just tap it on the merchant's phone and the payment will be done. Earlier, there was a limit of 2,000 rupees for such tap and pay payments. Now that limit has been increased to 5,000 rupees.
Yeah.
So that works in our favor. From a merchant perspective, what happens is, because I am actually capturing the merchant as well as his distributor, I help the merchant to carry out his ordering to his multiple distributors to the same app. Which means I have access to the merchant's data when the merchant is placing the order, and I have access to the merchant's data when he's actually making the sale. I also have access to the payment data of the customer when the customer is making the payment. Within this same app, there will be functionality like UPI-based collect payments and UPI-based QR code payments as well, in addition to your normal credit debit card payment. There will also be a link available within this particular app, which can be sent to the customer. The customer can click on that link, and then he can initiate the payment from his own phone. Now, what happens
the regular, the regular UPI features, basically, where you can ask for a payment.
Absolutely.
Yeah, sure.
Absolutely. All integrated into a single app itself. And the reason for integration into a single app is from a reconciliation point of view, because often we have seen that reconciliation becomes a challenge for this, small this thing. Now, Abhishek, quickly, before I close this use case and before we move on to the next question, it is very important to note that when I have access to this merchant data, okay, while the merchant is going to be a liability customer for me, I am going to be able to cross-sell a lot of asset products to him. I know his demographic data, I know his earning data, I have his financial profile, I know if he actually owns the property or not, I know if he has children or not, and I'm going to push products to him in terms of products for him, his family, his business, so on and so forth. There are multiple such use cases that we have planned in other sectors as well, but these are just some top ones that come to my mind where we already started the work.
Could you just very quickly just name the sectors where you are looking apart from these 2-3?
Sure, Abhishek. So, education, blue-collar worker. Then we have use cases for salaried employees, white-collar workers.
Okay.
We are creating use cases on the merchant side. There are multiple use cases. The one I said was from a retail perspective.
Sure.
But on the merchants, we are creating B2B2C use cases as well.
Okay.
We are creating use cases around supply chain, both anchor-led as well as non-anchor-led. And that's a holistic ecosystem banking solution that we are creating for supply chain perspective.
Okay, great. So I think just a shout out to everybody. In case you guys want to ask a question, please feel free to raise a hand and I'll pass it on to you. So in the meanwhile, I think we can touch upon this Neo tie-up that you've done with Neo for this. I think it's called Neo X, right? And can you take us through that tie-up? What are you offering? What is Neo offering? Where you plan to acquire customers or cross-sell, and what Neo gains out of it? So can you just lay it out for us? What this whole tie-up is about.
Sure, Abhishek. So NeoX is our first Neo banking program launch. As a part of NeoX, it's a 2-in-1 account that we are offering in partnership with Neo. And why 2-in-1? Because the first account is the savings account that we are offering from Equitas Small Finance Bank, and the second account is actually account that Neo Money is offering. Neo Money is a SEBI-regulated entity, and Neo Money is offering for mutual funds. Now the idea is it's a mobility-driven solution. It's a completely digital solution. The user journey, we have kept it very simplistic. Okay, you can download the app, you can register yourself, you get a OTP, Aadhaar OTP based process. After that, you can book an appointment for your full KYC completion. The agent will come to your home, he will just take your biometric, another OTP will be sent to you, and your full KYC is done. Very soon, once we start the video KYC, which is slated to go live soon this month, that will also be extended to Neo, and video KYC based onboarding will also happen. Once that is done, then there are multiple options that the customer has when he starts using the product. Now the idea is we are targeting millennials over here, and we all know that millennials are not interested in traditional banking. If you ask them to go through a brick and mortar based banking, that's a complete no. And today, they are even not interested in going through a mobile banking or an internet banking kind of a setup. And that is where I started my discussion today when I said use case specific products. And this is going to be the future of banking. While we are talking about terms such as BaaS, banking as a service, we are talking about terms like neo banking, fintech banking, and so on. At the end of the day, it is use case driven products. Our NeoX product is actually created for millennials. The idea is to adapt to their day-to-day styles, patterns, and the way they live their life, and create a product, give a product into that particular comfort zone. For example, one interesting feature that we are bringing on NeoX, and this is something that when Vinay said, I was very excited. Vinay is the founder of Neo, and it's a very interesting feature. See, through NeoX, you will also be able to make payments. Okay, right? So tomorrow, because it's got a debit card, it's got a very swanky debit card, and so on. So tomorrow, a millennial orders pizza for him and his two friends, and the bill is around 1,200 rupees, and he feels guilty, that hey, 1,200 rupees I've spent. So immediately, when he spends something on that product, will give you an option that hey, look, you spent 1,200 rupees. Would you like to, save 120 rupees or 200 rupees? So we give him 10% of what he has spent, 15% of what he has spent. And today we are giving it as a saving into the mutual fund. So he just does a right swipe, and that 120 rupees gets into his mutual fund. Okay, a mutual fund of 120 rupees gets bought. So we are trying to do that. So whenever a customer, a millennial is actually indulging in lifestyle spends or any other spends, immediately at that point of time we tell him that we give him an option to save 10% of it, and we are trying to inculcate the habit of saving over there. While today, like I said, it's mutual fund. Tomorrow, what we are trying to do is integrate a flexi, FD kind of a thing, which keeps on getting topped up, which can be of multiple values. So this same 120 rupees goes as a deposit, and then tomorrow you spend around 5,000 rupees. Another 500 rupees goes as a deposit, like a sachet, deposit kind of a thing.
Interesting.
Now, Neo, while today the acquisition is on a retail model, we have plans along with Neo to, also go on a B2B2C model over there, where in all probabilities, we will push NeoX as a product in institutional use cases. Though NeoX will continue to remain a partner-driven product, the complete front-ending of that will be carried out by our partner. And
so the customer sorry, go ahead.
Our plan is to have multiple such partnerships in place for multiple products. At the same time, also have bank-led products in place for a targeted distribution.
Sure. So the customer will ultimately be owned, if I can say, by you. So you can cross-sell any product to the customer. There's no restriction on that, except the wealth management products, perhaps.
So we have no restrictions whatsoever, even for the wealth management products. The customer is owned by Equitas. The customer is jointly owned by us and our partner for the products that the partner is distributing, and by Equitas for the product that the bank is distributing. Independently, the customer can go ahead, register on internet banking, mobile banking, and also start operating this account independent of NeoX as well.
Okay. And let's say what is a milestone customer acquisition, let's say in 1 year or 2 years? What are you targeting?
I would have loved to give you a number, Abhishek, but we have just started on this, and well, the response has been great, overwhelming. I would like to hang on to that numbers and maybe give you a number after 1 quarter.
Okay. I think the CEO of NeoX in some interview mentioned that they are expecting a 2 million kind of number from this tie-up. But I was not clear whether it was a year or 2 years.
See, like I said, the targets will be quite ambitious, and the targets are quite ambitious the way we have taken off.
Sure.
Okay. But I would like to restrict myself on speaking on numbers right now. Just give me 3 months.
Sure,
Give
sure.
me 3 months and I will come back to you with some numbers.
Sure. Let's quickly move on to some questions which have come up. So there's one question on chat by Amey Sathe. What are the key challenges for the digital journey of Equitas SFB in your view? How do you get your asset side customers to use more digital services, considering they might be more comfortable dealing in cash?
Okay, thank you, Amey, for that question. So what we are trying to do, Amey, over there is, see, on the asset side, there is a lot of digitization that needs to be done. Okay, so what we have done is, as a part of our digital transformation, we have tried to identify, we have started understanding our core systems that are servicing on the asset customers. We have also started understanding our mobile applications that are servicing the asset customers. And we are looking at integrating our asset and the liability systems. Okay. Now, whether that integration would happen into a single system or whether we'll create some wrappers and then work around with multiple systems is something that we'll only finalize once we complete the study. But having said that, we have identified user journeys that could be digitized as low-hanging user journeys, okay, as low-hanging projects, and we have identified some mission-critical features that needs to be automated immediately. For example, collections. Okay, digitization of collections is extremely important on the asset side of things, and that is where the first thing we did was automating eNACH over there. But now what we are also trying to do is we are automating UPI collect request over there. Okay, because we know COVID times are difficult and a lot of customers may not pay on time. They may not be willful defaulters, but again, if they don't pay another 7 days, they are ready to pay the money. So at that point of time, my system should be able to support a collect request. There we have also integrated internet payment gateway based link based payments. So we could just send a link to the mobile phone, the customer would click on the link and the payment would happen. So the first thing that we have tried to automate on the asset side is the payment space, the collection space. Okay, because that is where the money actually comes in. And when I say this, other than, so if I talk about retail lending majority of the items are on the digital side. If I talk about the mutual fund, yes, you are right. Mutual fund, the customer behavior, I'm talking about the smaller size loans. There the customer behavior is where they are more keen on the cash dealings, and that is where we are trying to now we have built the eNACH thing, and we are now trying to implement the eNACH as a mandatory thing. So on an eNACH kind of a model, it becomes automated. It's like a standing instruction. eNACH is nothing but a standing instruction where this account gets debited and the collection happens.
Sure.
Again, having said that, there are user journeys, like I said, that we have identified and we are automating those. In some cases, wrapper apps are getting created, which actually talks to my current mobile app, which actually talks to my, core system, and then, on top it gives, because earlier there used to be multiple interfaces, and now we want to create a single interface, both for my relationship manager as well as for my customer.
Sure, sure. We'll go on to the question from Yogin Kumar. Can you unmute your line and ask your question, please?
Yeah, hi Vaibhav. So I wanted to know actually what exactly you are planning to do in social media banking and the bot banking. That is my first question. Second is from your 6 pillar that you discussed earlier. I couldn't able to differentiate between your digital payment product team and your digital transaction team. So if you can throw differentiate between those two units, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Sure, Yogin. So I will take your second question first. Now, digital payment and digital transaction banking. So when I say digital payments, these are digital payment, prepaid and acquisition products. Okay, so we are talking about products like FASTag. We are talking about PPI use cases. We are talking about program-led POS. We are talking about UPI, Bharat QR, AEPS, domestic remittances. We are talking about NETC. We are talking about collections via Master Money, Send Visa Direct, and so on. But when I talk about digital transaction banking, see, today as a small finance bank, we are not allowed to do a lot of transaction banking. We don't do a lot of transaction banking products, trade products, and so on. And that is where we are trying to lay a platform for our journey, successful journey to becoming a universal bank. So today, things like public fund management system, PFMS. So whenever we work with government, we have to integrate with PFMS for all sorts of subsidy disbursements. The Aadhaar payment bridge system through which subsidies are disbursed, APBS system, the eNASH system, and the virtual account system. These are 4 key projects which are being taken up under transaction banking today. Going forward, trade and forex will also be taken under transaction banking. And then there will be, products such as working capital management. There might be products like invoice discounting. There might be products like, supply chain finance and so on. And those will all fall under transaction banking as and when, the bank decides to roll them out. Abhishek, can we have the first question that Yogin asked again?
Sure. I think he wanted to ask you whether what you are doing on social media banking and bot banking.
Yeah, thanks. So, Yogin, what happens is when we start creating this bank-led use cases, and we start, so today Neo is a partner-led use case, but tomorrow when we start creating this bank-led use cases for millennials or for education segment or for youngsters overall, they are more inclined towards trying to carry out banking through social media. Now today, a lot of these banks have banking through social media. I know it because we had carried it out at Yes Bank, and wherein you can actually carry out banking through the social media platforms. You can understand there will be certain keywords. You can understand your account balance while you are on Facebook or while you are on the social media and so on. On the bot banking, again, it's a combination. Bot banking is more of a backend technology where a lot of RPA, robotic process automation happens. But bot banking is also automated. For example, today bot banking, if you go to our website, you will see ADA. Okay, ADA is our bot that is only from a customer service, customer experience perspective. But at the same time, we plan to have an AI-based bot, an artificial intelligence-based bot, with whom you can actually carry out your banking services. So you will be able to carry out transactions. You will be able to pull out last few transactions by having a bot at the other end. That is what we mean by bot banking and social media banking. There will be a lot of convergence between bot banking and social media banking because bot banking will also be used over social media to carry out automated banking.
Great. Thanks. Thanks, Yogin, for your question. We'll move on to Mayank. Mayank, can you unmute your line and ask your question, please?
Sure. Thanks, Abhishek. So my question was, you spoke a lot about a lot of the use cases which were sort of more external to the organization and how you interact with the customer. Yeah, one of your pillars on the whole digital 2.0 was also related to the digital transformation of business or internal digitization. So can you talk about a few use cases related to how you're improving your sales process or other internal business processes using this entire digital rollout and using all the extra data or the incremental data that you're now collecting through this digital rollout?
Sure, man. So I will discuss on a couple of things over there. So you asked specifically about sales process. So on the sales process side of things, we plan to bring in gamification based rewards programs for our sales RMs. We believe that that is really going to pump in a lot of enthusiasm. Gamification is the way forward. Today, even when you and me, we use apps like PhonePe or a Google Pay. Okay, when we carry out a transaction, we end up getting a scratch card in the form of a cashback. You scratch the card and you get that amount, and we are so excited that hey, I got 7 rupees, 9 rupees, 15 rupees as a cashback. Okay, you end up getting vouchers. So that's the gamification part of it, and we intend to launch a rewards program for our RM to help them, incentivize on the sales side. Other than that, on the internal use case perspective, man, what we also plan to do and what we have started is, see, asset has been an extremely important business for us. Okay, there has been multiple applications that we have been working on the asset side of things, and like Yogin rightly pointed out in the earlier call, or rather Abhishek was also talking about it, that it is a very cash-dependent business. My first project on the asset side is to create a neobank out of my entire assets business. We are going to convert our asset business into a fintech banking use case or a neobank on its own. The moment we are able to create our asset business on a neobank on its own, everything that is manual over there becomes digital. Okay. Now there is a lot of dependencies on systems over there because there are multiple backend systems, and that is where I was saying that we need to identify the systems which will not be able to cope up with this plan of ours, and we need to replace those systems on a priority basis. And Narayana has already started work on that. And B, wherever systems are available, there create APIs and then create the wrapper and then keep the wrapper on top and then create that as a neobank for the asset. Okay. Now that neobank for the asset will have multiple interfaces. It will have an interface for the RMs. It will have an interface for my internal teams. It will have an interface for my credit manager. It will have an interface for my customers, so on and so forth. It becomes a neobank in itself. So it's a use case in itself. Abhishek, you are on mute.
Sorry. Mayank, you have any other questions? Okay, so we'll go on to another question. This is more about you. So somebody's asked, what motivated you to move from Yes Bank, which is making rapid strides in digital banking, to join a small finance bank?
Sure, I'll take that question as well. So we did a lot of digitization in Yes Bank, and majority of the digital initiatives that you have heard about Yes Bank are the initiatives that were initiated by Ritesh, me, Naveen and team over there. Naveen is the guy who's heading digital banking over there today after Ritesh and me moved out. And so quitting Yes Bank was a difficult decision for me, but I had spent 6 years in Yes Bank and I then wanted to end in Yes Bank. After Ritesh left, there was a kind of a vacuum within digital banking. Okay. Equitas offered a very unique opportunity where it was my role was a plus. In Yes Bank, on the liability side and the asset side, we were not involved. 80%, 90% of our work was on the payments. So if you look at all the work that we have done, I have done in Yes Bank, then most of the work has been on the payment side. Whether you talk about free charge, whether you talk about having the largest program on MasterCard, virtual card, 3.5 million cards, whether you talk about PhonePe, whether you talk about Bharat Pay, whether you talk about Pay Nearby, having created 6 million, close to 6 lakh, 7 lakh plus BC agents, whether having UPI market share of 40%, APS market share of 42%, these were all on the payment side, all these achievements on the payment side. Here, there is a very, very unique opportunity that was offered where there was a combination of payments, create banks. So this is the first time that within Equitas, digital banking carries its own P&L. Digital banking did not have its P&L earlier. After I joined, in the past months, we have created a P&L, we have got the board to approve the P&L. Now, within that P&L, we have a payment section, we have an asset section, we have a liability section. So, combination of these three things is something that gave the role a very, very interesting twist, and it gave me an opportunity to come here for a stint and help take the small finance bank from its journey of a SFB to a universal bank and establish it in the digital space. That was one of the primary motivating factors.
Okay. Another question which I have, and this is more about how would you be different from all the other banks who are practically trying to do the same thing or similar things, like go and tie up with fintechs, use that model to either acquire or cross-sell or acquire and cross-sell. And so how is Equitas any different from other banks? What is the USP for Equitas?
So Abhishek, we are not trying to do what the other banks are trying to do. If you closely have a look at this space, then most of the banks today are running after fintech companies, and they want to partner with fintech companies and help the fintech's journey of acquiring the customer, thereby adding to their top line, which is fine. But at the end of the day, the customer belongs to the fintech in that use case, and the bank doesn't have any kind of a say on that customer. The bank is just adding to its top line of transaction value. What we are trying to create here is different. We are creating use case specific products. We are becoming a fintech on our own. And when we create these use case specific products, we will partner with fintechs, but we'll partner for that particular niche expertise that we want from that particular fintech. Okay. And when we create this use case specific products, the go-to market remains bank-led. The ownership of the customer remains bank-led. And tomorrow, if I want to engage with the customer for any of my other cross, tomorrow, if I want to do any other program with the customer, I am free to do that, and I will want to lead my GTM. Even in the partner-led use cases, we are not going ahead and partnering with all the fintechs. Okay. Otherwise, it would have been very easy. You know, all the fintechs that we created in Yes Bank, you bring them over here. They are more than happy to partner. They all know this space. They all know them. But that's not what we want to create. What we want to create over here, again, over there is, if that fintech product is going to fit into Equitas's larger schema of things. We have identified certain segments, certain areas where we want to acquire customer. We want to acquire customer of a certain type who can bring certain amount of business to the bank. And when the fintech actually brings a plan to the table for that, okay, that is when I decide how do I partner. What is the value add I am bringing to the table? What is the value add the fintech is bringing to the table? And once the fintech is going to offer only his side of the products, okay, how do I indulge the customer into my other banking products? That is where that value proposition has been created. And that value proposition, more importantly, is being marketed as a co-branded product. Okay, I am not a service provider or a powered by Equitas Bank for these products. I am not going to become a powered by. It is going to be a co-brand product. So if you have a look at NeoX, it is Neo and Equitas brand bring together NeoX. If it's going to be a merchant acquiring program, then it's going to be my Equitas. I will not name the program partner, bring together this particular program. So it's a co-brand product. And in co-brand product, from a regulation point of view, from a technology point of view, from an information security point of view, you know, the skin in the game is equal for me as well as for my partner. And that is where the ownership, the challenges, and all subsequent things.
Sure, great. We'll go on to Ojasvi. Ojasvi, can you unmute your line and ask your question?
Yes, thanks, Abhishek. My question is, Vaibhav, if you can speak about within your, I mean, as you are rolling out this digital 2.0, what is the hurdles that you face in terms of, you know, digital adoption? If you can talk about any you know, example, whether it is internally or external stakeholders. I mean, hurdles which you face adopting, you know, digital.
Sure, Ojasvi. So, you know, whenever you try to bring in any kind of change, okay, there will always be a resistance to that change. Okay, but change has to happen. And we are also facing similar things when we are trying to bring in, you know, the new digital journeys, or when we are trying to implement our digital 2.0 plan. Now, it is easier on the customer side, because on the customer side, you are actually carrying out an innovation and you are creating a new tool to acquire the customer. You are creating a new program to service the customer. You are creating a new product that the customer is going to, you know, register and start using. Hurdles is where, you know, hurdles actually come in digital transformation, where we look at digitizing a lot of the internal journeys. Okay, when we talk about a particular, the way a particular thing has been happening for the past few years, and when you talk about digitizing that particular journey, that is where, you know, hurdles come. But fortunately, you know, what we are trying to do is we are trying to work out a very, and our MD has been very supportive and very, you know, has been leading from the front over there, where he says that, you know, we have to digitize, digital transformation has to happen. And that is where we work very closely with the business head or the unit head. We create a change management methodology. We implement it, you know, we create a joint task force. We have created the name of a digital garage. So every time we are trying to, productize a particular journey and digitize it, we create a digital garage. The digital garage constitutes of people from the digital transformation team. It constitutes people from all those teams who are getting affected for that particular user journey. They come together and they form a change management plan, and that change management plan is implemented and it is reviewed on a weekly basis. It is overseen and only escalations come to me or the unit. Okay. On the customer side, Ojasvi, I do feel that eventually, when we start rolling out complex programs, yes, we will, from the existing customers, specifically on the MF retail lending side, specifically on the MF side, in fact, not even on the retail lending side, we might face some resistance because there, it will be complete conversion to digital. But that is something that we will have to, we'll cross the bridge when we reach the bridge. We'll have a plan in place for that.
Sure. Thanks, Ojas. Sorry, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, I just had one more question around the fintech alliances, which you have talked about as one of the pillar of your, digital banking strategy. So my question there is, if you can talk about your journey on alliances front, where you stand, and second, related question on that is where you talk about you just not focus on the top line but also look at the bottom line when considering the alliances with fintech. So is there any growth number that you look at that the bottom line or should also grow by this much percentage? I'm saying if you can also put some qualitative context, that would also help.
Sure, Ojasvi. So to give you some examples, now on the fintech partnership side, what we are looking at is we are looking at consumer acquisition. Now, from a consumer acquisition perspective, let's say a savings account consumer acquisition perspective, we plan to roll out certain programs. NeoX is the first program we're there. Similarly, we have plans for merchant acquisition. So on the merchant acquisition, there are 2-3 strategies that we have created. One is the POS-led strategy on the acquisition side. One is the NFC-based POS-led strategy. One is a program-led strategy where we intend to partner with entities like smart cities, municipal corporations, roll out a program for them, and within that program, acquire the merchants within that particular geography by the use of that program. Okay. Then there are strategies where we are riding on fintechs, where the fintech is going to acquire the customer for us, whether it's a retail customer, whether it's a distribution channel. One of the programs that we plan to do on the fintech side is the supply chain, where just to give you an example, let's talk about somebody like Marico, who would have a tremendous distribution mechanism, or a HUL who would have around 24 million retailers today in the market. Now they would have master distributors, retailers, and so on. So when we talk about these kind of entities and we partner, we go to them as a fintech, not as a bank, giving them a solution that automates the entire reverse ordering. So a retailer orders from a distributor orders from possibly a master distributor or the OEM directly, or he orders from the OEM. So there is an ordering system, then there is a delivery system. Now this ordering happens either directly through a mobile app, or it can happen through a paper, or it can happen through a feet on stick, FOS. So when we create a solution around it, we create, giving lending to the retailers, based on data that, the ordering data that he has within the app. What happens is we are creating an ecosystem solution. Now, this ecosystem is the supply chain ecosystem solution. Now, generally, if I talk about fintechs, what fintechs do is they bring the solution to the table and they want a larger chunk of the revenue. And now I am converging within to the second question. A lot of these fintechs, they want to take 90% share of the revenue. They want to take 85% share of the revenue. Okay. Now, banks have been doing that. Banks have been giving this kind of revenue share to the fintech because majority of the work is being carried out by the fintech. But then what happens is at the end of the day, banks end up only creating top line. What we want to do is, we want to create these products and we want to do our own go-to-market. And when we do that, we will make sure that majority of the revenue stays with us. And when we partner with this fintech, okay, we are not going to give that entire thing to the fintech where we are a backend service provider powered by Tasbank. That happens, then what is the difference between what is going on with 10 other banks and what I'm trying to do? Rather, I'm going to work with that fintech to bring a value prop to the offering. And when I bring the value prop to the offering, I'm going to reduce the percentage that the fintech expects from me. Okay, I'm going to be an equal partner on that particular program. I'm going to have the ownership of the customer and then roll it out. Now, I would not want to just give you a percentage in terms of whether I'm going to bring it to 70, 30, 50, 50, 30, 70, 10, 10, 90 or 90, 10 or 0, 100. I will not dwell into those details on this particular call because those are very product specific, those are very program specific, and those are very confidential commercials as well. But largely what we intend to do is today the balance is completely scaled, tipped in favor of the fintech, and eventually we want to bring it in favor of the bank.
Thanks,
Sure, Vaibhav. Thank you.
Thanks, Ojasvi. Sorry, we are a little bit out of time, and there's still one or two questions on chat which I want to cover. So thanks and thanks for your understanding. So quick question, last one. I'll throw it to you. Somebody's asked it on the chat. Kindly explain more about your digital P&L. You have expenses upfront, but how quickly will you break even, and what's the fixed cost YOY for your P&L? And how will it flow through to the bottom line? So basically your entire P&L for next 3 years.
Okay, so what we have done is, Abhishek, we have created product-wise P&L. Okay, so my neo-banking has a separate P&L. My payment product, each payment product carries a separate P&L. So for example, prepaid use cases have a separate P&L, micro ATM, APS, separate P&L, domestic remittances have a separate P&L, payment gateway, acquisition have a separate P&L, so on and so forth. Okay. Now, when we talk about this separate P&Ls that we have created, we also factored in for the costs. Now, costs are both. One are the fixed costs, and second is project-specific costs that we expect to incur. Okay. On the revenue side, we have factored in the revenue that we'll make from the program, both on the as one-time fees, as transaction-based revenue, as subscription fees, and so on. Because every product has a different income model. What we have done, however, is we have not factored in the transaction banking costs at this point of time, and that is something we have kept a buffer for that. Okay, so a majority of the cost we envisage to undertake once we get into the universal banking license scheme of things. Okay, and that is when a majority of the products on the trade, forex side, etc., will happen, and that is when the developmental cost would hit my P&L. Having said that, from a break-even perspective, we are looking at a horizon of a 3-year period. Okay, while we would be going aggressive, but we are looking at a horizon of a 3-year period, considering that we will go on to become a universal bank, and there are additional costs that will get added onto the P&L.
Okay. Sure. Thanks, Vaibhav. I think very, very insightful session and very structured. I think we understood the digital 2.0. So just to summarize, there's a proper structured digital 2.0 strategy now in place, and a new team is there. There's a little bit of hiring, which is probably in the pipeline, but pretty close to getting everybody on board. Maybe in the next month and a half, that will happen. Also, a lot of focus on bank-led tie-ups as well as partner-led tie-ups. Few segments where Equitas focusing in terms of bank-led tie-ups is education, blue-collared segment, white-collared, and merchant. And in terms of partner-led segments, we are hopefully expecting more announcements. And in terms of the USP, basically you're going in with co-branding, not losing control of the customer, and reinforcing your brand ability to cross-sell and provide more and more products to the customers. So great. Thanks for your time, and thanks for all the insights, and thanks to the audience for all the questions as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Abhishek. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good